With Dragonflight now being just 1 month away, we're starting to see Blizzard really hone in on small adjustments from tuning and bug fixes. So I figured this would be a better time than ever to give my latest impressions on the tanks. I wanted to walk through my second impressions of the talent trees for each of the classes and their overall performance. So in this video, we're going to be focusing on the Vengeance Demon Hunter, a very competitive looking spec going into the first season of Dragonflight. Obviously, this is still beta, and there are still tons of possibilities for change, so that's something that we need to keep in mind. I do plan on rolling out videos though for each and every tank, so if that's something that you're interested in, feel free to subscribe. It's free after all. Let's dive in. Starting with a fresh tree on the Vengeance Demon Hunter, all we are given is Sigil of Flame, and it's pretty easy to grab a lot of useful talents as you progress throughout the rest of the talent tree. The start of the tree is actually going to provide us with most of our core kit that we've been used to seeing over the last couple years. You have abilities like Imprison, Consume Magic, and Improve Disrupt, with the addition of some newly available abilities for the Vengeance Demon Hunter, specifically Vengeful Retreat and Fellblade, which can both provide both a little bit more mobility or rotation flavor to the class. The start of this tree, I think, is actually a perfect little balance of new and old skills, and a nice little glow up to certain abilities like Improved Kick or more Fury Generation. Personally, I do find myself building out my tree like this though. We'll take Shattered Souls, Charred Warblades, Blazing Path, Imprison, Improved Disrupt, Pursuit, and Vengeful Retreat. What I like about the setup is that I can easily swap up my tier 1 talents if I need something like an offensive purge or a damage or fury generation, but I'm going to go over those changes in a bit. As we progress into the next part of the tree, we're actually going to notice again that we have some new and old abilities and powers. If I'm being honest, this is probably my least favorite part of the tree. Not saying that this tree is bad, but there just are some relative constraints to pathing. The only dead talent in my opinion would be Lost in Darkness, which seems to be strictly like PvP oriented. Maybe? Is it just me, or is this almost completely useless? I do enjoy the addition of Chaos Nova to the core kit though. Vengeance has long been yearning for the ability to actually stun targets, and while sigils are pretty cool and unique, they are relatively limited. Chaos Nova is actually a pretty easy pickup or trade out for a lot of other talents when regarding Mythic Plus. If I were running with multiple classes that provided an AoE stun of some sort, I could imagine trading this out for more damage or utility if needed. The progression through the tree, for me personally, has been something like this. We're going to grab Fellfire Haste, followed by Chaos Nova, Rush of Chaos, Soul Rending, Illidari Knowledge, Demonic, Precise Sigils, Sigil of Misery, and Will of the Illidari. In cases where you need a slow for your group, you can easily actually trade Fellfire Haste for Master of the Glaive, which I really like. I didn't think this would be the case until I was running Shadowmoon Burial Ground this weekend, where having a slow actually proved to be extremely useful on the first boss. It's also pretty easy to drop Sigil of Misery and Precise Sigils if you wanted Improved Chaos Nova or Infernal Armor. I also want to note that there is actually a workaround for Precise Sigils as well, just in case you don't like playing with sigils at your target. If you actually make a macro that has your sigil at your target or at yourself, it will actually ignore the talent completely, which is a good thing, I think, right? While this tier isn't perfect, it's fairly flexible depending on the dungeon, and it doesn't feel like your trade-offs are going to be that punishing in my personal experience. Now for the rest of the tree though, it's pretty easy to fill out. The tier has some great capstones with Collective Anguish, The Hunt, and Quicken Sigils all making an appearance. There are some notable pickups as well, like if you need Darkness or Demon Muzzle. What I've typically been doing is this. Internal Struggle, Erratic Fellheart, and then Collective Anguish. And then on the right side of the tree, we are looking at Eldraki, Design, Extended Sigils, and then Quicken Sigils. Lastly, I'm grabbing Soul Sigils for a little extra generation for both AoE and single target. With this build in particular, you're going to be left with 2 points. What I've normally been doing is putting one of them into Infernal Armor and then the other one into Chaos Fragments. The beauty of these talents though is how many different possibilities there are. Just because this is what I like to do doesn't mean that it's the only build or the right one. I would say you have about 4 to 6 points to play with here, and it actually won't impact your rotation that much, but it will allow you to pick utility based for your group composition. For example, you can drop Misery and Precise Sigils for extra Infernal Armor, or maybe the Hunt. If your group has plenty of AoE CC, then maybe you can drop Chaos Nova for Darkness, or Improved Hunt damage for maybe an offensive Dispel. I've been asked a fair bit why I don't run the Hunt on stream, and personally I just don't like the ability. It feels really bad to hit in larger AoE pools, and I really like the feeling of Chaos Nova plus extra fragment generation. It doesn't make the ability bad, but as an individual I can actually adapt the tree slightly to my own preference, or what my group might need. While there might be a better talent tree out there, Warrior, the DH is a solid class tree in regards of the Vengeance spec for Mythic Plus. For actual guide writer builds though, I highly recommend checking out sites like WoWhead, where smarter people than me actually talk about talent choices and the reason you might actually take certain talent points. So Go check that site out. Similar to the class tree, I want to walk through the spec tree, go over choices and some flexible options that I have found that work pretty well in the context of Mythic Plus. Once again, looking at this tree, we're actually going to see a few abilities that we've seen before, like Fracture and Fell Devastation, Sigil Silence, and Deflecting Spikes. But we're also going to see the addition of some extra abilities like now Frailty being applied on Sigil of Flame, Fell Flame Fortification, or Retaliation, which causes Demon Spikes to provide a Thorms type damage profile, which for the record I've always loved as a tank concept. I've been pretty determined for the most part sticking to the left side of the tree, but later I will talk about building out slightly right side talents to pick up things like Sigil of Chains. I start the tree by taking this. I take Fell Devastation, Fiery Brand, Frailty, Deflecting Spikes, Perfectly Balanced Glaive, Fracture, Calcified Spikes, and then finally Sigil of Silence. This will put us at 8 points, which will unlock the majority of the second tier for pathing without causing too much issue. I want to start off quickly by talking about what I personally don't like about the second tier of the tree. It mostly relates to underperforming choice nodes like Bulk Extraction and passives like Fiery Demise. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's a time and place, or even just a preference for players who enjoy the types of abilities, but I found that in Mythic Plus they're pretty weak. Also, the far right side of the tree is really difficult to get to without having to take a bunch of abilities in your first tier to access things like Sigil of Chains, which arguably is one of the strongest utility options for the Vengeance Demon Hunter in a dungeon environment and some raid-specific encounters. Anyways, there are some great things in the tree that can really bolster the playstyle, self-sustain, defensive, and damage of the DH. What I've been using on beta specifically looks like this. We're going to be taking things like Agonizing Flames, Void Reaper, Soul Furnace, Fallout, Dark Lair Boon, Burning Blood, 1 stack of Extended Spikes, and then Spirit Bomb. Now, before anyone gets triggered, because of Void Reaper, Spirit Bomb isn't necessarily mandatory to apply Frailty now. It is possible to not run Spirit Bomb ever, but in dungeons where you're pulling more than 5 targets consistently, it's just nice having a Fury Dump that isn't capped to 5 targets, or a Frontal in that matter. Dungeons like the Azure Vault, for example, have some pretty small sized pulls, typically ranging from 3 to 5 targets in normal situations. Not to say that you can't go bigger. Also, dungeons like Court of Stars can have some pretty small packs as well if you're pulling relatively conservatively. That's what I like about this tree though, is that you have a little bit of leeway to trade Spirit Bomb for something else, like maybe more Fury Generation from Volatile Flameblood, or more damage reduction from Painbringer. These talent choices will allow us to access the lower left and middle areas of the tree, which is all we really need. Once tier 3 is unlocked, the pathing is fairly direct. What I've been playing mostly has been pretty straightforward. On the left side of the tree, we're going to take Focus Cleave, Vulnerability, and Soul Crush. And then on the middle of the tree, we're going to be looking at Stoke the Flames, Feed the Demon, and then Last Resort in the middle. This leaves us with 2 points. And I've seen a lot of different builds from this. Some players enjoy playing Alessian Decree, especially with Quicken Sigils from the class tree. Fighter to the Flame though is also really strong, and unlike Sigil, provides a pretty solid single target damage gain. But it's also slightly more thought-provoking with, having to find and target your demon, as well as choosing when you want to execute it with a glaive. For a class that's really simple, it's actually nice having something that's a little bit more nuanced in the kit. I've also seen a fair bit of players go for Soul Carver, though similar to the Hunt for me personally, I find that it feels really bad to hit an AoE. I see this being more of a raid talent, but who knows? That's the beauty of these new trees. If you're doing lower level content, it's also pretty easy to drop Last Resort. But I personally run Last Resort because of, cheat deaths are insanely powerful for a tank in content where there's a potential lethal damage. I've been playing a lot with fodder, and then I normally sink my last point into either Extended Spikes or Volatile Flameblood for extra defensives or Fury Generation. I do want to note that it is possible to grab Sigil of Chains, though I do recognize that it doesn't necessarily feel great. How I personally do this is by dropping Volatile Flameblood, Painbringer, and 1 stack of Burning Blood. You can also drop Spirit Bomb instead or Calcified Spikes if you wish, but I would focus on dropping something in tier 1 or tier 2 talents, since talents near the bottom of the tree are actually what makes this class extremely fun and attractive as a competitive tank. All in all, I think the talent setup for the Vengeance Demon Hunter is pretty thorough and flexible. Maybe not in the best way possible like Protection Warrior, but you know what, I can live with this tree. For Mythic Plus, it's hard to imagine a point where you build out into the right side of the spec tree because of Fiery Brand just not being as efficient in larger pulls, and the trade-off for losing Void Reaver, Fallout, Demon Spike, Uptime, Spirit Bomb, etc. just doesn't really compute. In its current state, this is what I expect to be running in Mythic Plus, and let me tell you, it feels great. Personally, I am leaning towards maining this class in Dragonflight Season 1 because of the damage and the utility that it provides, but let me know what you guys think. How wrong is my build? Or what do you or don't like about the class or spec tree? I look forward to reading your comments down below. Huge shout out to all my Patreons. Without you, there would be a lot less of me. Hopefully you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.